All right. Welcome back to an episode of Two Plane Sports. Today was Selection Sunday in Oklahoma, finally. After what feels like decades and decades of missing the dance, we have made the NCAA men's tournament and the women's tournament. So we're going to touch on both of them, probably mainly focus on the OU men's basketball team just because that's the one we've seen the most this year. Talk about the can Oklahoma make it a realistic run? Maybe go to the Final Four championship. Who one can hope. We'll see. We'll talk about it. Let's get into it. All right, we're back. Finally, it's been a while, and Oklahoma's finally back in the March Madness tournament.
Very exciting.
Brandon, how do you feel about it? We've talked about basketball so much off of this show, and I am very openly an Oklahoma basketball hater. I'm not a big college basketball fan, but I think OU basketball hasn't been trending well. But you were a believer in this team from the beginning. How do you feel about
So
being right this year?
I was definitely a believer, at first. It's hard not to be. They started the season 13-0. They beat Michigan, who won the Big Ten today. They beat Louisville, who was in the ACC title game. They beat Arizona, who was in the Big 12 title game. So everything was, a fantastic start, but that's pretty typical of Porter Moser's teams, or at least at Oklahoma is pretty typical. We always start off hot and then fall apart in conference, and that is what happened for a big stretch of the season. Is you start 13-0 and then you start just getting the wheels beat off of you pretty much everywhere you go. And a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, this team was dead in the water. Yeah, they lost to LSU at home, and it really just felt as if that was like the nail in your coffin. It's over because the schedule from there is going to be a gauntlet, and it for what the team really just rallied. I'm glad that the team doesn't listen to the outside noise because it was pretty dark out there on Twitter and everything for the basketball team. But they really started playing some pretty damn good basketball. They lost to Kentucky close twice. I fucking hate Otega Oweh now. It's so disappointing because that guy was a Sooner last year, and now he just kicks our ass. We should have won both those games against them, and we let that guy beat us twice. But it is what it is. They beat Missouri, they beat Georgia in the tournament. The things are just looking a lot better. I think this team really rides and dies with Jeremiah Fear's play. He's a kid that is really, really, really good at playing basketball, man. He's explosive. He's faster than everybody on the floor. He can kind of get anywhere he needs to go. He can kind of figure it out and get it done. I think once that kid develops a shot, like a 3-point shot, a consistent one, he's really going to be unguardable. And unfortunately, he will do that, but it's going to be at the NBA level. We're not going to get him at that yet. But he's 29 points against Georgia in a win, 28 points in a layup with 5 seconds left to take the lead against Kentucky, which should have been the winner. Obviously, we folded it, but he's playing lights out. I think if he continues to play at the clip he's playing at, and you can kind of get Jalen Moore kind of back to where he was, because I think for a big stretch of the season, Jalen Moore was the best player on the team. Even though Jeremiah Fears had the most talent, potential, whatever, Jeremiah Fears has really overtaken that now, and he's clearly option A on that Sooner basketball team. Like I said, there's really not a whole lot of weaknesses in this game, and it's crazy to think about because the kid should be in high school right now, and for him to be dominating and playing at the level he is against some of the SEC's best is pretty scary. I can't imagine what he would be doing to high school kids right now if he did decide to stay. Like he probably could get 70 a night if he wanted to. But yeah, I think you have to keep riding the Jeremiah Fears hot hand. Hopefully he keeps it going. Get a little more production out of Jalen Moore, kind of get him back to where he was. I think you should have Sam Godwin back for the tournament, which is going to be a big lift. Bryson Goodine needs to knock down some shots. Glenn Taylor, another guy that can shoot. Kobe Elvis, Duke Miles. There's a lot of players on this team that have shown stretches of really good basketball, and I think we need all of them to kind of, it's time now. It's March. There is no tomorrow anymore. So, realistically, if this team plays the way that they're capable of, there's no reason that they can't beat a lot of really good teams. And we're going to have to with the way the bracket shifted for us. You draw the 2-time defending national champion right out of the gate. So welcome back to the tournament.
Yeah, and going back to February, it really seems like, I mean, Jeremiah Fears had a pretty decent game against Florida, even though the team got absolutely stomped. Ever since then, though, they've kind of been on a hot streak. Like you mentioned it, they a 1 point loss against Kentucky, a last second just
Twice.
heave by Owe in that first game. Could have, both times, like you said, it could have gone Oklahoma's way. They didn't at the end of the day, but I remember going into that game, I was kind of writing it off. I was like, all right, after this game, Oklahoma's going to get just stomped on like they did against Florida. And that's kind of going to be the final nail in the coffin because you can't put a team that just struggles to beat or even compete against good competition. And they proved me wrong. They had a 1 point loss, again, could have been a win. And then going into March, you're playing well, you won every game to finish the regular season. Yeah, every game to finish the regular season, and you go into the SEC tournament and again lose to Kentucky in a 1 point loss.
We lost to Ole Miss in March, but yeah, we had the
Oh
win.
yeah, by three. You're right.
But that's another game that they could have won.
They could have won, and but they've gotten better, and I think they're not hot, but they're definitely trending in the right direction at the right time. And as a lot of people know in this March Madness tournament, it's just like baseball. It's about getting hot or starting to trend in the right direction at the right time. Because you can be, a what 3, 4 loss team, but if you've been struggling in the last couple of weeks heading into the tournament, that could be doomsday scenario for you. Because then any team can beat you. Oklahoma, like you said, they've got a tough first game, and if they find a way to win against UConn, they have a very tough second game against what should be Florida, unless Norfolk State decides to pull off the upset of all upsets uh, for that game. But I think Oklahoma's got a chance now. It's going to take a lot. I think the first game, people are probably a lot of the money and a lot of bets are probably going to be towards UConn because they are back to back defending champs. They've shown that they can win. But Oklahoma, again, hot or getting hot at the right time. I think this could be a time where Jeremiah Fears, it's also a game where he can kind of stamp himself into that lottery or top tier of the NBA draft. Because like you said, I don't expect him to come back for a second year of college. If he did, hopefully it's at Oklahoma. That's really the one issue that we've had over Porter Moser's tenure is even when he has good players, he can't retain them after 1 year. So hopefully, if he did come back to college, which is extremely unlikely, he sticks to Oklahoma. Um, but him winning that first game against UConn could get him in that top tier of the lottery for the NBA draft. And if he can find a way to put on a big show against Florida, then that guy might be in contention to be, the 1 or 2 pick in the NBA draft, which is crazy because we haven't had a guy like that since Trae Young. And I mean, Jeremiah Fears is very impressive. I think Trae Young is a different stratosphere of NBA or basketball talent. That'd be pretty cool for Oklahoma to have a guy like that. That really wasn't like the number one draft or the number one recruit coming out of high school that was expected to be in the NBA after his freshman year, where he kind of showed like, hey, like I belong in those conversations. I'm gonna make sure that I'm gonna be in that position come NBA draft time.
No, for sure. And I just think, so we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, and you look at our side, or yeah, you look at our side of the bracket. We got the 9 seed, and I think it's a good spot. It's a good seed to have. But if you look down at the 10 seed, it's Arkansas, and that's another SEC team. It's a team we beat. But the way that the basketball brackets work and how it's shaped up, if you look at Arkansas's road, or at least their initial road there, I think Kansas is their opening game, and that's a very winnable game. I don't think Kansas is the Kansas of old. At least this season, they're not what you kind of expect out of a Kansas basketball team. So I think Arkansas wins that game. And then they have St. John's. I think St. John's again, Big East. They just haven't quite played the schedule that anybody in the SEC has. I think they beat UConn twice. Obviously, those are good impressive wins, but they have a loss to Georgia. I just think they're very beatable, and I would have loved for that to be the draw of Oklahoma. It's just not the way it worked out. But the silver lining to it is obviously if Oklahoma can get past UConn, and then if you get past Florida, which I believe is the best team in college basketball, so if you go out there and you win these first two games against Connecticut and then Florida, you're going to be sitting in a great spot in that Sweet 16. At that point, again, I think Florida is the best team in college basketball. So if you play well enough to beat Florida, I think you can beat anybody in the field. The problem is playing at that level for 5 or 6 games, whatever it is, to go on and win that tournament. And so, we'll see how it plays out. I think that is the it's the one good thing about having that kind of brutal draw there is if you do get past Florida and you're in the Sweet 16 now, you should be feeling really, really good about yourself. And it's just all about staying consistent and staying at that, keep playing at a high level.
Yeah, I would agree. I think looking at it, you would assume you maybe get Texas Tech or St. John's if you somehow get that far into it. Texas Tech has been playing good all year. St. John's, they can find a way to get past Arkansas or Kansas. They're a good defensive team, but even Patino said our offense kind of sucks. But we can keep someone. If we can keep someone from scoring, we can find a way to score just one more point than them. But they're not going to be able to hold up against someone that is on a hot offensive streak. If someone can get hot offensively.
And that's obviously good to have a great defense, and that's the way they're winning games. But I think once you get to a tournament like this where you're playing, beyond their opening round, because whoever they're playing as a 15 seed, they should be able to play just fine against. But beyond that, really, you're playing against somebody who's pretty darn good, and then it becomes harder to just use that shutdown style of play to beat some of the really good teams. But we'll see. I don't know. It's exciting to be back in the dance. Hopefully it's not short-lived for Oklahoma. Back to us, but we got a draw. We got a tough draw, but I think again that could make it fun.
It would be better than the last time we were in it. Did we make it to Austin Reeves here? 2020 was the last time with Trae Young.
2021 was our last appearance. So Reeves did make it, but I want to say that was before.
Okay. Well, the last time I remember really watching.
They drew overall 1 seed Gonzaga that year in the second round and played them close, but it didn't go our way.
And the last time I remember really watching was the Trae Young year when we got beat in the first round against Rhode Island, and I was like, all right, this was a good good time to just stop watching Oklahoma basketball, because you just don't lose to Rhode Island when you have Trae Young on your team. But
you did.
But you did. That's what killed my hope for OU basketball in general. But hopefully this revitalizes it, because it would be fun to see them at least make it a good game against the Florida team that stomped them the last time they played. If they can find a way to make it competitive and even have a chance to win in that round of 32 game, that would be sick. But they have to win the first one. You can't have that shot against Florida if you can't beat UConn. So
you definitely
let's beat UConn first.
You beat UConn, and then we get to those talks. But it's madness. It's what they say, right? So we'll see how we play that. Maybe Norfolk State will get it done against Florida. That would be something.
Man,
that'd be fun.
I hope so. That'd be fun.
That would be a lot of fun. I'm a big Norfolk State guy on Friday if Oklahoma's looking good.
Then everyone's going to be rooting against Oklahoma, unless you're an Oklahoma fan, versus Norfolk State. That Cinderella story is going to be crazy.
We're going to want Norfolk, but we'll try to kill that if it happens. Um, that's I don't know, man. I mean, pretty much for the tournament. That's just my takeaways. We need Jeremiah Fears to keep playing the way he's playing right now. We need Jalen Moore to pick it up a little bit. He's kind of slumped a little bit in the past two games, I think, against Georgia and Kentucky, or just not played to the level that you kind of expect out of Jalen Moore because he can really bring it sometimes. And then you're going to have role players somewhere. I don't know if that's going to be Glenn Taylor. I don't know if it's going to be Duke Miles, Kobe Elvis. Just somebody has to pick it up and kind of be that third fiddle. Because I think getting Sam Godwin back just on the glass is going to be huge for this team. They've kind of been hurting there kind of all season, but it only gets worse when Godwin goes out. I think Mo's been playing pretty good as a backup five, but it'll be good to have everybody back in the rotation and kind of get Sam back out there. I'm curious to see what happens to Luke Northweather if Sam Godwin is back. He kind of got buried during the regular season. Yeah, he's kind of played some good minutes in the SEC tournament because Sam was out. I kind of hope he kind of stays in there. He's really good on the offensive end as just a big guy that can shoot. He really stretches the floor out. Just kind of a liability on defense. So I think it's the problem you run into with him. But we got to figure out some way to score points and win.
That is true. Do you have any last thoughts before we shout out or we go to the women's bracket real quick?
North Carolina should have got in, and Texas should have got in. That's about it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's the North Carolina thing that you told me earlier was
One
crazy.
in
The
12,
fact,
odd one.
it's basically because what is their AD?
Their AD is somewhere on that committee, and he's got a pretty good pull.
Yeah. It's like you said when it's kind of when dad's the coach,
That's gonna put you
kids
in.
son's gonna be starting. Um, all right, moving on to the women real quick. They were selected as a 3 seed in the women's March Madness tournament in the Spokane region. USC is the number 1 seed there. They'll be facing Florida
Florida,
Gulf Coast in round one,
you get to
and
host.
then would be Iowa or Murray State in round two, assuming they win that first game. I mean, I think Oklahoma's got a good shot here. The only team that they've just really struggled against would be South Carolina, and South Carolina's the number 1 seed in the Birmingham region. They've been a really good women's basketball program over the last few years, so not the worst team to struggle against consistently, but those struggles have been big. And both times they've played, they've been big losses. So if Oklahoma can get hot there for women's basketball, it'd be fun to follow both these teams and see how far they can go. I mean, if they could both make the Sweet 16, that'd be pretty cool in the same season, especially after Porter's mid-season struggles.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you want to bet on one of these Oklahoma teams to make a run, I think the women's team is the more safe bet. I mean, realistically, they should be in the Sweet 16 at a minimum. I think they probably hammer Florida Gulf Coast at home. I think they take care of business against Iowa or Murray State. And then I don't know how the bracket shapes up to who they play in the Sweet 16 likely, but because you're right, I think they struggle against South Carolina. Texas is also very good over there at women's basketball, but Coach B's got that program going in the right direction for sure. I think that team has a for sure Sweet 16 run in them, and I honestly should go beyond, but we'll kind of just see how it plays out.
The other side of that bracket is Oklahoma State versus South Dakota and UConn women versus Arkansas State. So there's a world where Bedlam could happen in the Sweet 16 round for Oklahoma women's basketball.
Bring it on. That would be sick.
That would be fun to watch.
How
But
about
I have a feeling UConn would make that a really hard possibility.
yeah, yeah, they're probably picking it there.
But cool. I mean, basketball in Oklahoma is finally trending in the right direction. If anyone's an NBA fan, Thunder are not
Really,
slowing down. They're being investigated after sitting all 5 starters and still beating Portland in like late February. So that's interesting. Decision by the NBA
what are they being investigated for?
for resting players with no reason. So
They
you
should
always have to give like an injury
score.
reason.
We thought we were going to win anyway, and they did. So,
Yeah, basically.
we just thought we'd give the boys a night off because we got Portland on the schedule.
Yeah, I mean, it was basically a scheduling issue, or not an issue, but they had like 8 games or 13 games. It was like some giant stretch where they traveled to a ton of different cities within a 13-day stretch. I think it was like 8 games in 7 cities over a 13-day stretch. So Dagnall decided, hey, maybe these guys need to take a 1 day break before we move on to Denver. I think they had back to backs with Denver. It was interesting. Just terrible scheduling by the NBA, and basically they're investigating it. I don't know if anything's going to come of it, but worst case they're going to get a fine. I don't know.
We'll see. I mean, that's pretty dumb, but whatever. Thunder's
Yeah,
are. I think they've got a real good shot to win it, and that'd be a lot of fun. I think playoff basketball in Oklahoma City in the summertime is going to be pretty electric.
I agree. Hopefully they can make a run. But we're going to start with March Madness and then move on to the Thunder.
They get there when we get there, yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, thank you guys all for watching. We appreciate it. We'll see you next time.